Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my coach Temple of Anubis breakdown, where I give you a little bit of tips and tricks on Temple of Anubis, as well as suggest to you some of my favorite characters on Temple of Anubis that you can whip out in solo queue and get a guaranteed value in a lot of different situations. I'm going to break it down from top-down view and give you tips and tricks on routing and different things like that. So if you like this kind of content, go check out GameLeap.com because there's tons of content just like it. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it, shall we? Now, I'm going to talk about DPS, supports, and tanks and tell you about what are some of my favorite characters to play on this map and tell you why and special strategies you can incorporate on each one. Now, the first character we need to talk about is actually Widowmaker. Okay, so I'm going to be drawing a little bit on this map so we can really see exactly the different sorts of things that you could be doing on this map and where setups happen and everything. This is a top-down view, this being attacker spawn and this being defensive spawn all the way over here. So now, Widowmaker is a character that you can play, and of course, you're going to come out of spawn right here, and oftentimes, your teammates have three ways to route on attack, right? They can route over here, through the left side, they can route under and around all the way up to this high ground, or they can route underneath. Now, once they get over here, of course, they could cut through here and do different sorts of things. But you see the different avenues that people can navigate through. As Widowmaker, you can't go with any of them. You want to be playing all the way back by spawn over here. You either want to be playing right here, or you want to be playing the high ground right here. Now, the biggest mistake that I see on Widowmakers often that they make here all the time is that the enemy will have either a Genji here or a Roadhog here or some sort of shield plus a contester right here, or someone that's going to potentially dive the Widowmaker, and then they'll grapple up to this high ground to get a better vantage point. The problem with this is if your team are already routing through, right, no one's going to peel for you. No one can help you. And if you get dove right here, you're just going to get killed and you're not going to get any peel. So what you want to actually do is until the enemies rotate off, right? Until they rotate off to contest where your team is or where your team is going, you need to be playing lower to the ground, especially if they have something that can contest you. The reason you do this is because you're saving your grapple to where if a Genji or a Winston or anyone engages you right here, you can grapple to this mega or you can grapple to this mega. That coupled with a mine can allow you to turn the tables on a lot of different heroes. At the very least, if multiple enemies come after you, you take them out of the fight for so long that your teammates are effectively fighting a 5v4, which gives them an overwhelming advantage. But more than likely, if one person comes, you could turn the tables on them as long as you have your grapple to get out. So that's something that's really important generally. And then if the enemy all go back to point because your team is putting pressure on the point, then you, of course, you could grapple up here and you get really clear lines of sight. That's why Widow's so powerful on this first point. You get really clear lines of sight of a lot of different things. And of course, there's going to be like a Widow battle that could go on, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. But generally, that's the important thing you need to understand about Widow. Now, moving on to the second point, Widow becomes a lot worse, actually. The problem with Widow on the second point is there's more places she can get flanked from. You play up here, you could get potentially, there could be people camping here, people can come up from here, people can come around. There's just a lot of different angles that you can get flanked from, and the lines of sight aren't as clear because of all these pillars that are in the way, unfortunately. Now, that doesn't mean Widow's bad here, but she is a lot better on this point if you have no one that can contest you on the high ground. So if you can play this high ground right here, or if you can play this high ground right here without getting dove on by a Genji or something like that, then that means that Widow can still get a fair bit of value. But you got to understand that once your teammates push through, just like with the previous example, when your teammates start pushing through, no one can peel for you anymore. And unlike the previous example where you're near megas to retreat to, you don't have anywhere to retreat to very easily. You can't get to this mega very easily. You can't route this way or anything like that. So this map is a lot harder, the second point. But for the first point, Widow is very good. Now moving along, let's talk about Genji. So Genji is really good on all stages of Temple of Anubis, in my opinion. The reason for that is because of the high ground verticality. There are so many different escape and flank routes for Genji, whether you're on attack or defense. Let me give you this example. Let's say you're playing defense with Genji on the first point. You can hold this perch. You could potentially, if the enemy routes through this, you can make a flank play here. You can get out through this window here. You could potentially make a dash play up here on a Widowmaker. You just have so many different options because of the verticality. Now, if you're on attack, of course, you can route through this way, and you can go through the window over here. There's a window right here, and you could flank around a Widowmaker that's hiding on this high ground. You could potentially go this way and go under and potentially dash up to contest someone here, or even contest someone who's over here, or go flank around. There's just a lot of different options, and the vertical nature of it really plays into Genji's strengths, and that's why I think Genji is so good on Temple of Anubis. Historically, this has always been so. And then, of course, on second, it's the same way. There are so many different flank avenues. There are so many places that you can go contest people. You can go over here and contest anyone on this side. You can flank above and over this, around this way, and contest people the back here. You can fight pretty much anyone around this side of the map on attack. And of course on defense, it's similar way where you can basically stick around and wait on these high ground points and wait for enemies to come through and attack their back line. You can poke them down through the long sidelines to get your ult. Genji is very powerful on this for a lot of reasons. Plus, you just have so many high ground perches and things like that to get out if you ever get into a sticky situation. Now, lastly, the last DPS we're going to talk about is Junkrat, which is a character I love to whip out on first defense, and you should start whipping him out too because he's just so powerful on first defense. The reasoning behind this is because Junkrat can effectively shut off this entire avenue of push, which is traditionally one of the most used and a very powerful push because you gain mega control. Now, if enemies push into a Junkrat here, by the time they actually engage the enemy, they are going to be taking so much damage. They're going to be so weak. Junkrat can shut that down. Now, the biggest mistake that Junkrat players make actually is they play out in the open instead of playing behind natural cover, and they get picked off here by like a Widowmaker or something. When you don't necessarily need to show yourself out, you shouldn't even peek this angle hardly at all unless you see the enemies rushing this way or you have a shield right there. So that's some big takeaways here. And then of course Junkrat's fine on second as well. There's a lot of different places you could spam. You could effectively cut off this avenue as you can pump in damage into here, but unfortunately these lanes are a little bit more open, so it's not quite as good as a Junkrat that could effectively shut down all of these pushes and high ground pushes right here. A Junkrat can easily use his mind to relocate and spam this down. So there's not that many places that an enemy can go through. Every single place has some sort of choke that they have to funnel through, which makes actually routing against a Junkrat really difficult on this map in particular. Now, of course, let's move on to the next character on the list we got to talk about in the tanking category. We have to talk about Wrecking Ball. So Wrecking Ball is extremely good, at least for the first point attack on this map. And this is the reason why. So you see right here, a whole bunch of people will be grouping up right here. Like a whole team will be fighting here. So if you route this way, they can contest you. You route under them, they have the high ground. You route this way, they can damage into your back. So there's not really that many places that you can go besides here that kind of meets them on the level playing field. It's pretty difficult for you to route against teams like that. So what you do as Hammond, right off the bat, is you actually just slingshot yourself right here, and you slingshot yourself straight through to the point. And you hug right here, this corner, but you still are touching the point. Now, this will not only push the enemies back to contest you, but a lot of them will have to actually get off in order to contest you. So if only a couple get off, which can happen sometimes, you automatically create more space for your team. Because if your team route this way and fight them up here, now they have members down here, which means that your team gets to fight with more of a fighting force than the enemy directly, and the enemies are going to have to reroute, but you can keep touching this point until enemies have to respect you, right? Now, the next thing that you could do is if you touch this point and they don't respect you enough, or they only send one person, you can actually roll up over. You can either roll up here and slam them, or you can roll up here and actually boop them off the high ground. If you boop any enemy character down here when your team is right here, they're dead. It's a very free kill, and it's incredibly powerful. So not only on Wrecking Ball can you force space to be created by touching the point, but you also have a play even if they don't play into that by booping people off. And of course, Wrecking Ball is just extremely hard to kill when you're going through that fast. Even if you get stunned or anything like that, more than likely you'll be able to get out with more than 50% health. It's incredibly difficult to actually kill a Wrecking Ball when he's going straight from one point to the next. And of course, you can go back here and you can claim this mega if you need to, and you can even go claim this mini if you need to. So you have two different places. You could even roll all the way over here and claim this if you have to, and then go back into your team, swing up over this onto the enemy and pile drive them. So that gives you a lot of different options on this map. Now, lastly, I want to give you a suggestion for playing support and support positioning in general. So the best support on this map, in my opinion, at least on the first part, is Ana. Now, a big problem I see with Ana players is Ana players love to play right here. Well, this makes you really susceptible to a lot of things. When enemies push in, you basically have to relocate, right? Because you're going to be under so much pressure. So the best positioning typically with an Ana that makes you extremely safe is up here at first. Now you can rotate this way and play all the way over here, and you have clear lines of sight to your allies. And then of course you can rotate back as your team rotate back to point. You can play right here. Now the problem with playing this site, right, is that you could get dove. Of course, people could come for you. What you have to do is you have to pay attention to when enemies are trying to flank you, and then on top of that, you have to be ready to jump down to the point and relocate, because often as enemies are going to route this way, you need to be relocating before they route to you. Okay, but this gives you so many options, because you can route all the way back here, you can route off here, you could even route up to this high ground and run away if enemies chase you. But it just gives you such clear lines of sight. Playing over here protects you against a number of different comps, specifically compositions with characters like Widow and things like that. They don't have any clear lines of sight unless you're playing like all the way right here, which you definitely shouldn't. You don't want to be peeking this at all. So it's really difficult for you. And of course, if they play dive, of course, you can reposition closer to your teammates. But generally speaking, you should definitely set up your positioning much farther. And I think you're going to have a good time in general. And then moving on to the second point, of course, we got to talk about the second point over here. So the second point right here, Anas can play right here and hug this wall. And if they get dove or threatened, they have a route back this way. Now, the problem that happens with a lot of Anas is they peek out a little bit too far and they get snagged by a Widowmaker. But you just have to be really extra conscious about where a Widowmaker is playing, whether she's up here or right here. You need to be very careful to not let her get line of sight on you. But playing over here in general, when your team is playing on the point, makes it really easy for teammates to peel for you. And it makes it so that you have a get out of jail free card in going back to your spawn, which is so close. It is something you should definitely abuse. Anyways, I think that that's all we got for you about Temple of Anubis. These are my big suggestions for characters you should be playing on Temple of Anubis, and tips and tricks on how to get the most impact out of each of the characters that I brought up in this video. Don't forget that GameLeap.com is the best way to get you past your limits. If you've been having trouble ranking up, then GameLeap.com has everything you need in order to make yourself better and better at the game. So go check it out in the links down below, and I hope to see you there. Anyways, I hope this guide has been extremely helpful for you. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments down below. That's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time,